Period five, westward growth and reconstruction, begins with the end of the Mexican-American War. The Mexican-American War ended in 1848. The United States acquired the territories of Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and California, basically the whole southwestern part of the United States. And the last compromise that involved the westward expansion of states and the issue of slavery was the Missouri Compromise in 1820, which set up Missouri as a slave state, Maine as a free state, and outlawed slavery about 3630. So there was zero legislation dealing with the southwestern part of the United States, hence the reason for the Compromise of 1850. The Compromise of 1850 is made up of 5 parts. The first part is that California would enter the Union as a free state. Well, this upset the balance of free and slave states in the Senate of Congress, and therefore challenged the South that slavery could be outlawed. So the South was not very happy about this. But then Stephen Douglas, the Little Giant, offered popular sovereignty for the territories of Utah and New Mexico. And if you look at the map here, you can see that New Mexico is in the south and Utah's in the north. So common sense dictated that one would be a slave state and one would be a free state, which basically sets the compromise at 2 parts that are pro-northern, free, and 1 part that's slave. And then the next part of the compromise was that this area here that you're seeing in the mouse was in dispute between Texas and orange and New Mexico territory in pink. And this is from the Mexican-American War. Both the state of Texas and the territory of New Mexico claimed this rectangle right here. And to solve the problem and part of the compromise, Congress offered to pay $10 million to Texas to allow New Mexico to have that territory. Probably the most important part of the Compromise of 1850 is something called the Fugitive Slave Act, which allowed these 11 southern states to go into the north and recapture their escaped slaves. This was something the South really wanted and was willing to put up with California coming in as a free state to counteract that. And then the last part of the compromise is up here in above Virginia in Maryland, that slave trade would be outlawed in the District of Columbia, in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. The next compromise, due to territorial expansion, was the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Now, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was, as you see from the map that's here, was this territory here. And again, Stephen Douglas, the Little Giant, proposes that that Congress allow the people moving into these 2 territories to determine the slavery issue themselves. Kansas logically would choose to be a slave state, and Nebraska would logically choose to be a free state. The problem is most of the people that lived in Kansas were non-slaveholders. And so to tip the scales in the ballot, many men from Missouri, shown here on with the mouse, illegally came into the territory of Kansas and voted illegally in the election for which constitution would be approved, whether it would be a free constitution or a slave constitution. And because of that, basically a civil war broke out in the middle of Kansas that became known as Bleeding Kansas. And hundreds and thousands of people were wounded or even killed over this issue of whether Kansas was going to adopt a pro-slavery constitution or an anti-slavery constitution. Eventually, Kansas did adopt a pro-slavery constitution. This concludes the period 5, Roman numeral 1, dealing with territorial expansion and compromises that resulted from that.